Having a diverse group of students simply means recognizing that all people are unique in their own way. Their differences could consist of their reading level, athletic ability, cultural background, personality, religious beliefs, and the list goes on and on. There has always been diversity in the classroom, but in today's society, it is important to embrace it and make positive use of it. Teachers should value diversity, and they need to model this attitude to their students. When people value diversity, they recognize and respect the fact that people are different, and that these differences are generally a good thing. For example, when attempting to solve a problem, it is better to assemble a diverse team with many skills and different ways of approaching the problem than it is to assemble a team that has all their strengths concentrated in one area. So what can we as teachers do to encourage, value, and promote diversity? Teachers must provide students with an environment that is conducive to learning. If a student feels uncomfortable, unsafe, or not respected, then their chances of success in the class dramatically decrease. Also, as our society becomes more diverse, it is important that students learn to value the use of diversity to the greater good. Teachers already have a number of roles in the classroom, yet valuing diversity is one of the most important ones that teachers must fulfill. There are a few things that teachers can do to create an environment where students feel valued and respected. Number 1, take the time to learn about your students' backgrounds, interests, and learning style. This will allow you to create an environment that is conducive to each individual student. Allow time for students to learn about each other and gain an appreciation for diversity they are bringing to the classroom. Remind them how boring it would be if we were all alike and there were no differences among us, and each person is unique. Teach students that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. When working in teams, encourage students to take advantage of the strengths of other team members in order to produce the best possible results. Bring in different people to the class as resources that students might be able to connect with. Search out people that are different from yourself and might share certain qualities with your students. Students need role models. Many times when they see they are connected to someone in some way, they will be more apt to listen and learn from them. Never tolerate bullying, teasing, or other put-down behaviors at any time in the classroom. Implement a zero tolerance for anything that is disrespectful, hurtful, or intolerant of diversity. Since the 1960s and the rise of the civil rights movement, American colleges and universities have been engaged in an ongoing debate about how best to enroll, educate, and graduate students from historically underrepresented in higher education. These groups include women, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, American-born students of Asian ancestry, and immigrants. As enrollment statistics show, changes in both demographics and the applicant pool of college admissions policies are bringing about a measure of greater diversity in entering classes. Once students are on campus, though, many of these students feel that they are treated as unwelcome outsiders, and they describe having encountered subtle forms of biases. Some students of color have labeled these biases as the problem of ignorance, or the look-through-me syndrome. As reported by the Institute for the Study of Social Change, students talk about subtle discrimination in certain facial expressions, it not being acknowledged, and how white students take over the class, and speak past students of color, or in small everyday sites in which they perceive that their value and perspective are not appreciated or respected. Though often unwitting or advertent, such behaviors reinforce students' sense of alienation and hinder their personal, academic, and professional development. There's no universal solutions or specific rules for responding to ethnic, gender, and cultural diversity in the classroom, and research on best practices is limited. Indeed, the topic is complicated, confusing, and dynamic for most teachers, and it's headed with uneasiness and difficulty and discomfort. Perhaps the overriding principle is to be thoughtful and sensitive to the way you think is best. The material that we have to deal with diversity is intended to help us increase the awareness for the matters some faculty and students have indicated are particularly sensitive for women and students of color. Some of the problems affect all students with diversity, but there are a lot of ethnic and gender differences between faculty and members and their students. So there are some general strategies that us as teachers can go by. We can recognize any biases or stereotypes that we may have absorbed. You can think to yourself, do you interact with students in ways that manifest double standards? Do you undervalue comments made by speakers whose English is accented differently than your own? Or do you assume that most African Americans, Latino, or Native American students on your campuses are enrolled in other special admission programs? Do you assume that most students of color are majoring in ethnic studies? If we take a look at ourselves, we can make sure we do not portray these to our students and teach them our biases. We need to get them under control. Another thing you can do is you can treat each student as an individual and respect each student for how he or she is. You can rectify any language patterns or case examples that include the domain of any group. You want to do your best to be sensitive to terminology. Terminology changes over time as ethnic and cultural groups continue to define their identity, their history, and their relationship to the dominant culture. To find out what terms are used and accepted on your campus, you could raise a question with your students, or consult the listing of campus-wide students groups, or speak with your faculty affirmative action officer. There's lots of things you can do to make sure that you don't say the wrong thing at the wrong time in your classroom. You can introduce discussions of diversity in department meetings. Concerned faculty can ask that the agenda of department meetings include topics such as classroom climate or course content and course requirements. There's just several things that us as teachers can do to make sure that we are adhering to diversity.